I came home wearing the rank I had spent 11 years earning, and my father still introduced me to his friends as my daughter who works as medicine. Not Dr. Ashford, not the attending physician at Vancouver General, just his daughter, the one who works in medicine. Like I was a receptionist who occasionally refilled the paper trays. It was Thanksgiving weekend. My mother had called me in September to make sure I was coming. She does this every year, calls early, confirms twice, then calls again the week before just to check the drive isn't too long from Vancouver to Kelowna. The drive is 4 hours. I have made it every year for the past 11 years. She still calls. I didn't mind. I loved her for it. What I minded was the way my father greeted me at the door that Friday evening. He opened it before I could knock, looked past me at the rental car in the driveway, and said, "You didn't bring anyone this time either?" That was it. That was his hello. I had just finished a 72-hour rotation. I had driven 4 hours through the Coquihalla in October weather. I was carrying a pie from the bakery in Merritt because I remembered he liked their butter tarts. And I had stopped specifically so I wouldn't show up empty-handed. And the first thing out of his mouth was a reminder that I was 34 and still unattached. I handed him the box of butter tarts and said, "Hi, Dad. It's good to see you too." He took the box without looking at it and walked back inside. My mother was in the kitchen. She heard the exchange. She always hears the exchanges, and she came out to the hallway and hugged me for a long time without saying anything. She smelled like cinnamon and the particular brand of hand cream she has used my entire life. I let myself just stand there for a moment. "He's been in a mood," she said quietly. She always said that. He was always in a mood. What I never said back to her, what I never had the courage to say, was that it wasn't a mood. It was just him. It had always been just him. My father is not a cruel man. I want to be precise about that, because cruelty implies intention, and I'm not sure he ever intended any of this. He is a man who grew up in a particular way, with particular ideas about what mattered, and he held on to those ideas with the kind of grip that doesn't loosen even when everything around it changes. He had worked for 30 years as an engineer at an infrastructure firm in Kelowna. He was respected there. He coached my brother's hockey team for 6 years. He was on the board of the local curling club. He knew everyone, and everyone knew him, and in the geography of his life, he was somebody. My brother followed a path he understood. Trade school, then his own renovation business, then a house in West Kelowna with a double garage. My father talked about my brother's business at every family dinner. He knew the square footage of every job my brother had completed in the past year. He could tell you, without pausing, how many employees my brother now had and what their specialties were. He could not tell you what my specialization was. I had told him multiple times. I am an attending physician in the emergency department at Vancouver General Hospital. I trained in emergency medicine because I wanted to be in the room where the stakes were highest, where someone comes in not knowing if they are going to make it through the night, and where the decisions made in the first 20 minutes can determine everything. I chose it deliberately. I am good at it. I have been good at it for years. When I told my father I had been promoted to attending, he nodded and said, "So you're done with all the school then?" That was the entire response. When my brother hired his third employee, my father took him out for dinner at the steakhouse on Harvey Avenue to celebrate. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. I moved past the need for pity a long time ago, somewhere around my 3rd year of residency when I stopped having the emotional bandwidth for it. I'm telling you because I want you to understand the texture of what Thanksgiving weekend was like, year after year, so you understand why the parking lot at Kelowna Airport on the Sunday afternoon meant something. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Saturday was the main event. My mother cooked for 2 days, as she always does, and the table was set for 12. My brother came with his wife, their 2 kids, and that particular energy he has always brought into a room. Loud, easy, magnetic. My father comes alive around him. There's no other way to describe it. The room temperature changes. My aunt and uncle drove in from Penticton. A family from down the street came, the ones whose kids grew up alongside us. My father's old colleague from the engineering firm, a man named Doug, showed up with a bottle of BC Red and stayed for 4 hours. I sat between my mother and my 7-year-old niece, who spent most of dinner asking me if I had ever seen a real skeleton, because she was in a Halloween phase, and thought my job was basically one long Halloween. Mostly I see people when they're very much alive, I told her. But do you ever see bones? Sometimes. Cool, she said, and went back to her mashed potatoes completely satisfied. I loved her enormously for that. After dinner, when the dishes were being sorted and my brother and my father had migrated to the living room to watch the game, Doug came over to where I was standing by the kitchen window with a cup of tea. "Your dad tells me you're a doctor in Vancouver," he said. "Emergency medicine, yes? That's right." He nodded, and something shifted slightly in his expression. A kind of recalibration. "That's a serious place to work. It keeps me busy," I said. "Your dad must be proud." I looked across the hallway, where my father was laughing at something my brother had just said, slapping his knee the way he does when something genuinely delights him. "I'm sure he is," I said. Doug was kind enough not to press it. That night, after everyone had gone home and my mother had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table alone with the last of the tea. My father came in for a glass of water and found me there. He didn't sit down. He stood by the sink and drank his water and said, without looking at me, "Doug was impressed by you." I waited. "He said you must be smart to work at a hospital like that." "Doug was very nice," I said. My father set down the glass. "You should come home more," he said. "Your mother misses you." "Not I miss you. Your mother misses you." He nodded and went to bed. I sat there for another hour, listening to the house settle. Outside, the Okanagan was dark and still and cold, the lake invisible somewhere beyond the tree line. I had grown up in this kitchen. I had done homework at this table. I had cried at this table once, in grade 11, when I didn't make the provincial science team the first time, and my father had come in and told me I needed to be tougher. That disappointment was a part of life, that I couldn't fall apart every time something didn't go my way. I didn't fall apart. I went back and qualified the next year. I qualified for a lot of things, in the years that followed. He never mentioned the science team again. Sunday was supposed to be simple. My mother made eggs in the morning and we sat together over coffee for 2 hours, talking about nothing in particular. Her garden, the new shops on Bernard Avenue, a cruise she and my father were thinking about for the following spring. It was easy in the way that mornings with her always were. My flight back to Vancouver wasn't until 4 in the afternoon. I had booked it deliberately late, so I wouldn't have to rush. What I hadn't accounted for was that my father would offer to drive me to the airport, and that I would, for reasons I still can't fully explain, say yes. We drove mostly in silence. The Kelowna airport is small. There's something almost charming about it, the way you can walk from the parking lot to the departure gate in about 8 minutes. My father pulled into the short-term parking, which surprised me. I had assumed he would drop me at the curb. He shut off the engine and got out, which surprised me more. "You don't have to come in," I said. "I'll walk you in," he said, and that was that. We crossed the parking lot side by side. It was cold, that particular sharp cold of an Okanagan October that feels different from Vancouver cold, drier, cleaner, like the air has more edges to it. My father had his hands in his jacket pockets. I was pulling my carry-on behind me. There was a black SUV idling near the terminal entrance. Not a limousine exactly. This was Kelowna, not Toronto, but a large, polished black Chevrolet Suburban with tinted windows. The kind that signals without subtlety that whoever is inside is not worried about the cost of the car service. A driver in a dark jacket was standing beside it, holding a small sign. My father slowed down as we approached. I saw him take in the vehicle. The driver, the quiet authority of the whole arrangement. He steered us slightly wide of it, the way you do when something feels like it's not meant for you. "Keep to this side," he said, almost under his breath. "That's probably for someone important." I looked at the sign in the driver's hand. It said Dr. Ashford. The driver caught my eye at the same moment. He straightened, nodded, and said, clearly and professionally, "Dr. Ashford, I have you for the VIP transit to the terminal and direct airside escort." The hospital liaison arranged it through the conference. I had been asked, 2 weeks earlier, to be a last-minute keynote replacement at a medical conference being held in Vancouver that Monday. The organizing committee had sent over the travel logistics. I had barely registered them. I don't usually accept this kind of service, but I had been in the middle of a shift when the email came in, and I just forwarded it to my assistant without reading it carefully. Apparently, the organizing committee had arranged a car. I stopped walking. My father stopped too. I turned to look at him. I couldn't help it. Whatever composure I had spent 11 years building, whatever practiced distance I had put between myself and the need for him to see me, it all compressed into that single moment, watching his face. He was looking at the sign, he was looking at the driver. He was looking at me. He was doing the math, and the math was changing everything he thought he knew about the parking lot he was standing in. He started. "That's for me," I said. I said it quietly, not with triumph. I want to be honest about that. There was no satisfaction in the way I said it, or if there was, it was buried so deep under everything else that I couldn't find it. What I mostly felt was tired. The specific exhaustion of having waited so long for a moment you stopped believing would come. The driver took my carry-on. My father stood with his hands still in his jacket pockets, and I watched him try to locate himself in a version of his daughter he didn't recognize. "You have an escort," he said. It wasn't really a question. "I'm giving a keynote tomorrow," I said, "at a conference." "They arranged it." "What kind of conference?" "Emergency medicine. It's a national one." He was quiet for a moment. A family was walking past us toward the terminal, a mother managing a stroller and a rolling suitcase simultaneously with the focused efficiency of someone who has done it many times before. My father watched them pass. "I didn't know you did that kind of thing," he said. "You never asked," I said. Not with anger, just as a fact. It landed the way facts do when they've been true for a long time and finally get said out loud, without drama, without the weight you imagined they would carry. It was just a sentence. It was just true. My father looked at the ground for a moment. Then he looked up at the driver, who had discreetly moved a few feet away to give us space with the particular trained awareness of someone who has witnessed 1,000 private airport moments. "Will you be safe?" my father asked. "The drive back to Vancouver. The car is just for the airside transfer." "Right," he said. "Of course." Another silence. The October cold moved between us. "I'm going to be late if I don't go," I said. He nodded, and then he did something I wasn't prepared for. He reached out and put his hand on my shoulder, briefly, the way he used to do when I was small and he was proud of something I'd done, some test score, some race I'd won. He hadn't done it in years, maybe decades. "Go on then," he said. His voice was different, smaller somehow. "Go do your thing." I held his gaze for a moment, because I wanted to remember it exactly as it was. Not softened by time or sentiment, not turned into something it wasn't, just my father, in a parking lot in Kelowna, finally looking at me like I was someone he was still figuring out. "Take care of yourself on the drive home," I said. "The highway gets icy this time of year." He almost smiled. "I know the highway. I know you do," I said. I followed the driver through the terminal doors. I didn't look back, not because I was angry, not because I was making a point. I just didn't need to. I had spent a long time waiting for my father to see me, somewhere between my residency and my first attending role, between the third Thanksgiving dinner where I sat next to someone who knew my CV better than my own father did, and the fourth. I had started to let go of that waiting. Not all at once. You don't do these things all at once. You do them the way you do anything hard. Incrementally, without fanfare, in the quiet moments between everything else. I had built a life that I was proud of. I had colleagues who called me at 2 in the morning because they trusted my instincts. I had patients who had come back months later to the department, recovered and blinking in the harsh fluorescent light, just to say thank you. I had a small apartment in Kitsilano with a view of the mountains, and a cat who yelled at me when I came home from long shifts, and a best friend who brought me pho when I couldn't leave the hospital, and had learned to read, with impressive accuracy, which kind of tired I was. None of that had ever needed my father's signature on it. I knew that. I had known it for years. But knowing something and feeling it fully are different things. What happened in that parking lot didn't change the facts of my life. The facts had been the facts for a long time. What it changed, I think, was something smaller and harder to name. Something in the way I would think about him going forward. Something in the space between us that had always been measured in what was missing and could, now, just barely be measured in what was there. He called me the following Wednesday. In 11 years, he had called me maybe 4 times. My mother was the one who called. He was the one who occasionally picked up when I called her, and then handed the phone over after 2 minutes. I was between patients when his name came up on my screen. I stepped into the hallway. "Just checking you got back okay," he said. "I did." "Good," he said. A pause. "What did you talk about at the keynote?" I leaned against the wall. Down the corridor, someone was being wheeled past on a stretcher, the quick efficient movement of a department that never fully stops. "Tridge decision-making under resource constraints," I said. "How emergency physicians prioritize when there aren't enough beds, not enough staff, not enough time." "That sounds important," he said. "It is," I said. "It's what I think about a lot." Another pause, less uncomfortable than the ones I was used to. "Your mother wants to know if you're coming for Christmas," he said. "I'll try," I said. "She'll call you. I know she will." I could hear him breathing on the other end. Just existing there, in the kitchen or the living room or wherever he was, holding a phone and not quite knowing what to do with the space between sentences. "Okay," he said finally. "You take care." "You too, Dad." He hung up first. He always hung up first. But the call had lasted 6 minutes, and that was 6 minutes longer than any call he had made to me in the past decade. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and went back to work. There was a patient waiting. There was always a patient waiting. The mountains were still there when I stepped outside at the end of my shift, pale and enormous against the evening sky. I stood at the hospital entrance for a moment before walking to my car, breathing the cold salt air that rolls in off the Pacific and smells nothing at all like the Okanagan. I thought about the parking lot. I thought about his hand on my shoulder, brief and unfamiliar and real. I thought we might be okay, not fixed, not resolved in the clean way that stories are supposed to resolve. People don't work like that, and fathers especially don't, and I have spent enough years in emergency medicine to be deeply skeptical of anything that looks too much like a clean ending. But okay, that felt possible. That felt, for the first time in a long time, like something I could hold. I got in my car and drove home through the city, through the ordinary gorgeous chaos of a Vancouver evening, and the cat yelled at me when I opened the door, and I fed her and made tea and sat by the window for a while, watching the lights come on across the water. It was enough. It was more than enough.